You are now tuned into Flipping the Birds, a Philly Sports Network podcast.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome one, welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds.
He's into the end zone. Touchdown, Eagles.
What's going on, Eagles fans? Welcome all to another episode of Flipping the Birds. I'm Brian Cameron alongside Eric Reese, and we're back. How you feeling, man?
I'm feeling good. A lot to talk about, but I think it's mostly positives and regarding Eagles football. But besides that kind of stuff, man, it's a lull period a little bit with hockey. So we're just hanging out. We're just, kind of getting ready for the bump and grind of two sports or whatever coming up in 2020. I guess 2024, 2025 is how we're going to be looking at it with, assuming the playoffs. I really do assume the playoffs with the Eagles. So,
yeah, we're officially about 30 days away, I think, from opening football. Eagles are a feature on opening week. They're playing the first Friday night football game, Friday Night Lights, and the first team alongside the Packers to play in Brazil, where apparently they can't wear green or some crap like that. Who knows what it is? But yeah, I mean,
that's kind of weird. Hold on. So you're saying Brazil can't wear green even though green's a part of their colors?
From what I was reading, it's so the stadium that they're going to be playing at, it was recommended for them to not wear green because apparently green is the rival of that home stadium's team. So kind of like Cowboys playing at the link, and you shouldn't wear green, I guess, or shouldn't wear blue.
That's confusing.
Well, something like that. But yes, that's neither here nor there. What is here and what is there is training camp. Training camp's firing off. The Eagles just had their recent public practice on Thursday last week. And for those that were in attendance, it was 50,000 fans at a public practice. I feel like that has to be like a record of some sort. But yeah, literally the entire stadium was nearly filled. And it was the fans' first glimpse of the Eagles' offense, the first glimpse of Kellen Moore's offense, the motion, the first glimpse of Saquon Barkley in the Eagles jersey, which is still getting hard to get used to nowadays. But I feel like we're very fortunate to be witnessing a backfield with Saquon and Jalen. Before we jump to the offense, how did you feel about not only the support that this team received in that public practice, but how did you feel about the team overall, their morale going into that practice?
I think the team morale, I look around as far as, what I'm hearing from press conferences, and it just seems like there's a ton of leaders and there's a ton of players that recognize their leaders, and they could be young, they could be seasoned veterans. What's his name? Dickerson, Landon Dickerson. Like, he's seen as a leader, kind of still relatively young, relatively new on this team. So for him to be seen as a leader speaks highly of himself, obviously as a professional. But I also think it's because, we have a secret weapon in Jeff Stoutland. And there's a lot of guys that, come out of that offensive line that they might struggle at first. They go through the growing pains, but they grow. I think the morale is high. I think that we saw heard about a couple things where people have kind of overreacted. I think the overreaction is with the offensive line. I don't think there's a ton to worry about there. I'm just pretty much revved up about what I'm hearing about the offense. Like, that's one of the big things where I'm pretty sure, that's the best of vibes, because it's the thing that we're most sure about.
And let's dive into that. I mean, it's a brand new scheme, right? Jalen Hurts, at the beginning of the offseason, said this offense is 95% new, which a lot of people took that as concerning that Jalen Hurts was revealing that as an excuse per se. But it doesn't look like much of an excuse when you have Hurts apparently studying this offense to the point where he wants this offense to be his offense. We saw a lot of motion in the backfield. We saw Devontae Smith in the slot. We saw a lot of things that it should really get you excited to see this team again. Like last year's offense was just so vanilla and bland. It was, I mean, let's be honest. 95% of us could run a better offense on Madden compared to what they ran last year. But it was what it was, right? Like now you have Sirianni in his. I'm gonna compliment him. You have him in his elements, right? He's playing head coach. He's doing his thing, right? He's in his element. He's everywhere he wants to be. He's being that motivator. That motivator at the end of the day, right? He's allowing Kellen Moore to do his thing, which is key because from what the reports say, not from what Brian's saying, he didn't allow Brian Johnson to do his thing. And he's also not stepping on Vic Fangio's toes because you don't want to step on that man's toes. But he's just allowing everything to flow. And I think that was the key thing that needed to happen this offseason was him taking a step back, humbling himself a little bit and be like, hey, like, it's not me. This isn't just a me thing. Like this has to be a we thing. And I think he notices he messed up last season. And again, I'm giving kudos. I think he's in rare form right now, and it's going to be a great season for him and his offense. But dude, like AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley, like how do you feel seeing these big names on this offense with the same quarterback and not hearing any quarterback nonsense of drama?
It's just entirely great that the offense, it gives different looks. It makes defenses, it's already hard to play defense against this offense because last year, you're right, the offense was vanilla and it still was an offense that made it to the postseason despite pretty much everything that happened with whether it was Sirianni's offense or the two defensive coordinators, and really nothing could get right towards the end of the season, and it was just that collapse. That offense is the reason why you were even able to sniff the playoffs because it held up.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people will sit there and say, "Oh well, and you're right. The play calling was stiff last year,
atrocious."
But you look at the yards, and there's obviously stuff that you can look back at and kind of be positive on, even though it's a lot of just disarray, kind of ugly, if you will. A lot of it's cleaned up, a lot of it, and it's all going to be for the most part the same weapons, the same high-powered weapons, and then you make an upgrade because Swift I thought was great. I thought he should have been, probably used a little bit more often than because there was times last year where you're like, feed the ball to Swift, and they just never did it. Hopefully you don't see that again this year in any case, and I think you won't because Kellen Moore, I think, is smarter than that, and in a lot of ways. But the thing that perks me up is Saquon Barkley. First off, sounds every bit of excited to be here as the fans are to have him.
It doesn't feel forced, right? Like it feels like he's like, hey, like yeah, I was a Giant, but after that, like I'm here, like I'm invested.
Well, his one quote, I want to pull it back up because I put it on our social media. He goes, "I'm telling you, it's like college. Ask anybody. When you leave college, the NFL, don't get me wrong, it's a whole nother level. But like stadiums and the environment, you never really get that college feel. You get that here." And that was him talking about just the open practice. That's not a regular season win. That's just the Eagles pretty much playing the Eagles with really no pop.
Mm-hmm.
Imagine that, fine, Brazil is what it is, but it's not Philadelphia. It's a cool thing. It's a cool concept, I guess. You get to travel. If you're a player, you get to go to Brazil. Maybe you hate it. I don't know. But the thing is, you have this kind of upgrade in Saquon where not only is he going to be the explosive runner, the pass-catching running back, word is that he's an absolute upgrade. He's the best blocker of all the running backs as well. So you kind of got a guy who can't wait to play in Philadelphia and is going to be a complete upgrade from anything you saw over the last really two running backs going back to Miles Sanders as well.
Mm-hmm. And sticking with Saquon, right? Before we get to Saquon's book club that you will be leading,
Yeah,
I don't know if it's just me, and I don't want to seem like I'm knocking anybody from last year, right? I agree with you. I feel like Swift his pop was great when he came on and he did his thing. It was phenomenal. I don't know why they wanted to make Gainwell the feature back. That's neither here nor there. We know who ran the offense. Nick, I'm talking to you. But with Saquon being there, right? It just feels like it's a bunch of intelligent conversation going on. Like they're talking football on a different level. These guys are talking about winning. They're not talking about, hey, I'm rushing for 1,200 yards and 15 touchdowns. So I got the best offensive line ahead of me. Like, no, these guys are talking about, hey, like if I don't get any touches, then I got to do my job and pass protect. We didn't see that out of a lot of people last year. We saw that out of AJ. AJ was willing to go above and beyond to make things happen. Devontae willing to go above and beyond to make things happen. Even Jalen at times. The offense went rogue at times because they knew how bland this offense actually was. But now we're seeing intelligent conversations with Saquon saying, I could take a backseat a game or two. I'm here when they need me to be here, and I would do everything that they need me to do, even when I'm not getting the ball. Like, that's key. You don't hear that anywhere, honestly. Like, you really don't. San Francisco, you need Christian McCaffrey to go off for them to be an elite offense. You can't tell me not. I mean, like you're not gonna put the game in Brock Purdy's hands all 4 quarters. You need
And they
CMC
might
to
not
do his
put it
job.
in Brandon Ayuk's hands.
Yeah, that's not gonna be in his hands this year. But also like around the league, you don't see much of that where like guys like a Derrick Henry might not be willing to take a back seat, right? But you have elite talent that understands like this is more about the team. This is more about actually bringing a Lombardi home, and I feel like this could be something that can grow into something greater in the future. I know that the eyes are on the Kansas City Chiefs on three-peating, but the Eagles are on the cusp of not only dethroning them, I feel like, but like if this team could just stay in this level, like this could be an elite team for years to come.
Philadelphia absolutely has potential, and I feel better about parts of the defense at this stage of training camp than we did, when we were kind of previewing training camp. Pretty much a big emphasis on, Quinyon Mitchell. Like that's one that stands out. Like if he's like looking the way that he played, and that's just one day at camp, but he was on a guy like AJ Brown. AJ Brown is, I feel, an undisputed top 10 wide receiver in the league. If you are able to play that kind of coverage, and yeah, AJ is going to get his catches because like look at him. But at the same time, it's like if you're able to cover him as a rookie out of being picked that way, the sky is the limit. And I do believe like the Eagles are absolutely more secure on the outside. We'll talk about the linebackers later. We'll talk about the safeties as well towards the end there. But you talk about the Kansas City Chiefs and the three-peating. The Eagles had the potential to match up against them and kind of have that Super Bowl rematch. We'll see where that goes, but I do think the offense absolutely gives a swell opportunity for the Eagles to get back to the Super Bowl. The defense just needs to hold up their end of the deal.
I completely agree with you on every aspect of that. I'm excited. I can't wait to watch Eagles football one way or another. But let's talk about the next subject that Eric is very near and dear to Eric's heart, and he wanted me to bring this into the conversation.
Had to.
So you will actually be leading this. I believe you are the president of this new club that's developing.
I got 4 books to give the Saquon Barkley's book club. Now, if you guys didn't pick this up, in this press conference, he said he was reading a book, and for what it was worth, I think it was nonfiction. It was about a boxer, or maybe it was fiction about a boxer. Either way, it basically it kept him motivated, and it's one of those art imitates life kind of deals. And then he was asked if he has any other books in mind afterwards, and he didn't really have one because but he has a lot of time apparently on his hands in camp, so he's open to recommendations. I got Scale, Keith Buckley. He was the singer of a band called Every Time I Die that I very much love. That band is disbanded. He's in a band called Many Eyes now. And this is also Watch by Keith Buckley. So, I don't know. Like, he's a very good lyricist. He's also a good writer. Probably haven't heard of him. Give him a chance. Also, Swamp Thing. See, this is about me.
Time out. So that is on my book list, and I've
Swamp
been
Thing?
itching to buy that comic book, but I've been getting lost on other books instead. But that, yes, like, chef's
Yeah,
kiss
this
to that.
book's about me. I mean, I guess some people think it's about Jason Kelsey, but that's a common misconception. It's really just about me.
Some
Oh,
roast beard.
yeah, that's it. Swamp Thing. There's not really much. Like, you know, Swamp Thing. You know me. You're here. And then, if you're really here, obviously you're an Eagles fan. I always like reading this one right here. This is a Sports Illustrated with Nick Foles carrying. You know, it's kind of like when people say, "Hey, I'm a horror fan. I like to read Stephen King. Hey, I'm an Eagles fan. I like to read Nick Foles winning the championship." If you just some recommendations. If you got time in your hands, Saquon, feel free to come on the show after you read some Swamp Thing and Eagles history, and also Watch and Scale by Keith Buckley. I have a bunch of the ones here, but I think we'll just go week to week, and I'll just give you 4 for now.
That's fair. That's fair. I would love to show the books that I'm reading, but my to be read file is quite taller than me at this rate, and my wife has put me on a timeout from buying books. But shout out to Saquon and his book club. One thing that I feel like we have to discuss this offseason is the possible. I'm trying to choose my words wisely because I always get roasted for how I say things.
Okay.
But the possible fallout of Nakobe Dean, who seems to be third on the depth chart if we're looking at it, right? It seems to be the favorites, Devin White, Zach Bond, who's catching the eye of Vic Fangio. But I mean, a third round pick that came with a bit of a health concern in the draft, and he fell down that far, right? The linebacker group, it does consist of, like I mentioned, Zach Bond, Devin White, Jeremiah Trotter, Ben Van Sumeren, and Nakobe Dean. And they also signed Quarterman.
Yep.
Yes.
I forget his first name off the top of my head right now, but he's from Miami. Like,
Yeah.
not the Miami Dolphins, but the U.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting group, to say the least. I'm a big Devin White fan of that signing. I feel like that was a home run signing. Zach Bond apparently seems to be a very secretly great signing for Vic Fangio. But where do we stand on Nakobe Dean? I mean, he's still young enough where it's like, he can develop into who we believe he is, right? He hasn't played as much because of health issues throughout his career so far.
Right.
But this guy was the quarterback of a very, very good Georgia defense. Is this uphill battle a concern going into the season? Or is it kind of like, hey, like, we got veterans ahead of him, like, he's learning kind of thing?
So I've sat here for a while and said, hey, the pressure's on, and it is. It still is on, because this is we're getting, time is still moving whether he's playing or not. So you kind of look at this and say, okay, like, is it a concern? Well, he hasn't really had the sample size to really show what he can do at an NFL level. However, if he is healthy and he's third on the depth chart with a linebacking group that doesn't really blow anybody away, because, right, like, we have Devin White, fantastic. Zach Bond, probably not somebody you would think of and say, hey, he's going to be like a critical part of this defense. Jeremiah Trotter is only drafted, most recent draft. So, like, that's kind of your school right there, outside of your linebackers that would otherwise be on the outside rushing. It's hard to say whether it's concerning, because part of me just wants to let it play out. Like, there's going to be maybe a possibility that he kind of, maybe he's a gamer. Maybe that's what happens in the middle of the season. His name's called upon, and then it's like, not as bad as we think it is. But obviously, if he's healthy and he's kind of sinking back in this group of linebackers, it's a little bit of a concern.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, we also expected nobody to really stand out as a linebacker right now, maybe outside of Devin White.
I definitely agree.
That's kind of where I'm at with that. Yeah.
And it's not a bad way to look at it, right? Like, it is what it is at this point, right? But there's been times where it just seems like he's had a very disappointing training camp. He hasn't had a training camp that we've expected of him to really stand out. But I think I'm with you. It's kind of like, hey, like at any point he could pop, right? Really, this isn't the end of Nakobe Dean at all. And I don't think we're declaring that or we're saying that in any format. I think this is just a bump in the road where you can learn from a guy from like Devin White. You can learn from a guy like Zach Bond. Like who's to say, let's say Devin White has a career rejuvenating season, Eagles sign him long term. Great, that's awesome. One part of the linebacker core is set. Zach Bond isn't the guy that everybody's declaring him to be. And hey, Nakobe Dean and Jeremiah Trotter could step in and take over that role at any point in the season. It's still early on for a lot of people to be concerned, but I do get the concern because it was a 3rd-round pick. It was a high investment at a crucial moment in Eagles history because we needed a linebacker. But I feel like they're a work in progress. The group itself is under construction still. There's caution tape all around this group until we see Vic Fangio's defense come out on Friday night. Possibly we don't if the starters play in the preseason game against, I think it's the Ravens, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah, that's why I remember as well. Could be wrong, but that's what I remember as well.
Yeah. So it's still up in the air. And another thing that's possibly up in the air if we have no more linebacker talk is
I will say this about the linebackers, and it's kind of to more so agree with what you're saying. It's not necessarily, and this is the cleanest way I could probably say it. It's not necessarily concerned about Dean to me because the linebacking room is so wide open, and toward what we were saying earlier, where he might fade back now, but at any time, since it's so wide open, and Fangio is going to just pretty much see what he has all year at linebacker. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you could sit here and say, man, Bond isn't really doing it. Or you can sit there and say, oh, well, it's time to, like, any one of those guys can be, pretty much a starter or in a starting role at any week. And to bring up, like, Devin White is such a good mentor and leader here. Like, just listen to a little bit of what Jeremiah Trotter Jr. said. Like, coming up, he used to watch guys like Devin White and then one of his teammates from then, Levante David, back when they're on the Bucks. So, yeah, he watched a lot of guys around the league. Another one was Fred Warner that he named. But he basically guys that he feels are durable 3-down linebackers. So I think that's going to be probably the future in Philadelphia. Like, I think that's going to be the aim. But then again, this is early talks. If Zach Bond can prove to be a stable linebacker, and then you don't see from White, which you were saying, where he maybe fades, out, kind of like how he did in Tampa, I guess. Then it's a little bit of concern there. You do want to see at least one linebacker out of this group stabilize and kind of have a firm foundation in going in towards the end of this year, even next season.
Well, it sounds like Devin White's taking that leadership approach very seriously.
Yes.
He's mentioned a couple of times where he has a thread with A.J. Brown and Jalen Hurts that's labeled as accountability, right? Like, that's, to me, speaks volumes. Like, this is your first year with the team, your first year out of Tampa, right? Like, you've had down years. You're on the cusp of possibly just going into bust status, right, at this point. But you're approaching the leaders of this team and saying, hey guys, let's hold each other accountable. I need you guys to hold me accountable so you get the best out of me, right? That takes, as a man, that takes a lot of guts, like that, right. to admit that you are not where you need to be and to have other people hold you accountable. That takes a lot of guts.
Just to confirm about that Eagles preseason game, it's on the 9th. It's at 7:30, and we're right against the Ravens.
Okay, perfect. And then just to throw this out there, so Vic Fangio was asked about Nakobe Dean after the public practice. He did say Dean kind of took a step back in the stadium practice.
Okay. Which is
it's not what you want to hear out of your third-year linebacker that you invested a third-round pick in, but it's still early. It just it feels like Fangio seems like a no-nonsense kind of guy. He wants his guys to just flat out play, like just do your best, play. That's all I want.
Yeah, he reminds me in hockey terms, same city. He reminds me of Tortorella. He's demanding. He expects your best, and it doesn't have to be quite successful in every play, but it has to be your best. If he's saying, and this is, I guess reading in between the lines, but if he's saying that Dean took a step back at the open practice, I wonder in his head how big of a step back it is. Because then again, just in reporting and how things are worded, it could just be overblown. If it's correctable, if he can correct it, pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And a guy like Fangio is your defensive coordinator, and it's not, again, Desai or Patricia. Wouldn't you have like a little bit more faith in that being corrected in a shorter amount of time, a quicker turnaround, so he's back on that level or it gets a step ahead again before really the preseason expires or even begins.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's time, and there's a lot of opportunity left on this team for him to do what he needs to do. Speaking of opportunity, right? So the Eagles have an opportunity right now to possibly bring in a huge free agent name to the defense that I've been riding for all off season. CJ Gardner-Johnson did leave practice apparently the other day due to an injury on his arm, and it was actually shown today during practice that he was not participating. He was actually on the opposite side by himself, running just alone drills. With Gardner having a bit of an injury history from his time with the Eagles, from missing all but 2 games last year with the Lions, from being injured already during camp, should the Eagles go all in on signing a veteran safety, example, Justin Simmons, who is actually the top safety in the market right now, and just hope to bolster the safety group come when CJ Gardner-Johnson is fully healthy? Because, I mean, they don't really have much depth. They have Reed Blankenship. They have a recovering Sidney Brown. They have CJ Gardner-Johnson, James Bradbury. I believe the other kid's name is Tristan McCullum, if I'm not mistaken, and then Mekhi Gardner.
And then you have Cooper, who is still, he's out
as well. Yeah, they could.
Right.
Cooper could be a versatile piece, but I mean, like, why not pay? You have the cash space. Why not pay big money for a guy like Justin Simmons and just bring him in as the core piece? Like, this is, I hate saying this. I know you're going to correct me on this, but this feels like this could be like a Super Bowl team where it's like, hey, like, you got a piece like Simmons, go all in when you can. Like, just do it.
I think so. I thought you were going to go around the direction of like, this feels like the Malcolm Jenkins kind of pickup, but no. Like I thought, I was like, no, it doesn't. But no. Here's the thing: you make a compelling argument because you don't have to really take a deep dive. You can just go right to the depth chart and figure out. There's not. Like Tristan McCullum is probably not somebody that I would say is like very adequate depth to begin with. Reed Blankenship, I'm fine with it, obviously being the starter. I don't think the injury is serious with Gardner-Johnson, so I'm not panicked about that. By the regular season, I don't think he'll be used so heavily during the preseason because you want to keep him healthy, like kind of as you alluded to. With Sidney Brown and Cooper, who like we don't really know, or I mean, and if we do know the timetable, they're missing precious time right now. I say pull the trigger because it's you already had questions, right? Before any of this, you had questions about safety depth. You just in the sort of the same way that you had questions about linebacker depth, except you had more questions about linebackers and safeties. Now with the injuries, I think the questions are starting to add up where it's about to be, kind of congruent or level. So make a signing, and I wouldn't want to see just a, ho-hum depth guy. I want to see somebody who's going to rightfully, prepare to help the Eagles make a impact or really not lose a step if his name's called upon. So I think Howie Roseman should be kind of ringing up about Simmons.
Yeah, I mean, it's a veteran move for a player that's familiar with Vic Fangio as well from his time with Denver.
Right.
It seems like a no-brainer. I know Benjamin Albright during the beginning of the season did put out there that Simmons and Fangio didn't get along or something of that sort. I don't know if that's factoring into it, right? But at the same time, it's like, I don't want to say you're one move away from the Super Bowl, right? but you're one move away from being a pretty damn good team. And like this secondary is going to be the strength of this defense, I feel like, because you have all the talent at cornerback. You have unique talent at safety at the moment, right? If Sidney Brown comes back healthy, we know he's a stud. I'm not completely sold on Reed Blankenship being the guy back there. CJ Gardner-Johnson, you needed him back because you needed that swagger. You needed that center fielder. But then after that, it's kind of like, why not get like a guy like Simmons where you have a veteran? You wanted Kevin Byard to be that guy last year. He wasn't. Simmons is literally right there for the taking. You don't have to give up nothing. Just give us some cap space. That's really all it's going to take.
If they don't go for a guy like Simmons and they do pick up a different free agent, it is what it is. But if you were to go pick up a different free agent and not Simmons, then my question, I guess, becomes why not just spread out Avonte Maddox at that point?
That's true. I mean, but I think Avonte Maddox is filling a key role right now because of the DeJean injury.
Okay.
It feels like DeJean and would be the starting slot, if anything, I feel like. But they've been testing Quinyon Mitchell in there as well, and apparently he's been doing phenomenally. But I don't know. Like I want Quinyon to be the outside guy.
Right. I want him to rightfully play his spot.
Yes, exactly. Like just keep him there. Like, but then you have Isaiah Rodgers and Keely Ringo. Like they have such a great problem right now, cornerback. Isaiah Rodgers and Keely Ringo are battling. Quinyon Mitchell is battling. Darius Slay he's CB1 no matter what. Avonte Maddox is, when he's healthy, he's probably one of the better slot cornerbacks in the game. Cooper DeJean, when he comes back, is going to be a very, very good piece for this secondary. It's a weird problem to have. It's a great problem to have, but like something's got to give at some point where it's like, okay, we're keeping guys where they need to be and moving from there. I wouldn't even be surprised if, and not only I assume they're going to get rid of James Bradbury at some point, but I wouldn't be surprised if you use Isaiah Rodgers as trade bait, honestly, because of the great problem you have.
I don't think that that's necessarily the direction it goes because, you're kind of, begging and, from your corners to fill in at safety just because of the depth issues. So I think there's still room for guys who necessarily wouldn't be starting at corner to still see playing time, or start a few games here and there. But and this is an area where at the beginning of training camp, or, you would think that a guy like Bradbury, like, oh, okay, well, this is literally what, we have him on the roster for. I'm like, well, maybe not. If all these other names that we've brought up so far, I think would be more equipped to be a safety than Bradbury. Now, I'm not, I don't think that, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not, it's not that I don't think, based on last season, you would think that that he doesn't really have much gas left, but I don't know that. And, if he comes out and starts proving people wrong, then that would be great. But it's just one of the things that's kind of died out as of late is this whole idea about Bradbury with safety.
And it's like that saying goes, right? You can't teach an old dog new tricks.
Right.
You're teaching a veteran cornerback to play safety in the late stages of his career. This is not like Cooper coming in as a cornerback and then teaching him safety early on. No, like this is a guy that's been playing cornerback for years, and he had a down season last year. I still personally feel like his down season was heavily influenced by the lack of not only talent but consistency at the safety position. Just because behind them you didn't have much talent back there. Like they weren't playing Sydney as much. Reed, I think, was injured early on, and it was a bit of a mess.
It's just one of the few corners that's transitioned to a safety, pretty flawlessly or seamlessly that I can remember might be Rondé Barber, but that's for the most part it. So it's you're right. Like it doesn't happen too often where it's like, oh man, that's a position change that really paid off. Like you're probably going to get burned at both ends more often than not. It's going to be very interesting. I don't know the relationship from what it sounds like. If you're saying that there is a kind of a not really a beef kind of be a strong word, but between Simmons and Fangio, then I can understand, probably not the price tag being met for that. But I think it is a pretty solid idea to bring in a trusted veteran who's familiar with the scheme. Or if you're not going to do that, you're probably going to move from within.
Yeah, I'm very curious if that's what's the gap right now between Simmons and Fangio.
But overall, I really don't have crazy concerns about Gardner Johnson injury history, because it's if I believe, in Philadelphia in 2022, and this is just going back a little bit, but it's been his best season was his season in Philadelphia, and then last year didn't he start? He started like more than 10 games last year. Like to me. No, he didn't.
So with Detroit, he only played in 3 games, started 2 of them. God.
Yeah. What am I missing my information from that? Hold on, let me go back.
His last season with Philly, he played in 12 games, started them, and then we missed him towards the end of the season. New Orleans, before that, played in 12 games as well. His first 2 seasons of his career, he played 16 games and 15 games.
My bad. I was thinking about Philadelphia where it was over 10. Okay, so the last year was his roughest year.
Yeah.
Regarding the starts. Okay, so I'm still not that concerned about his injury history, and here's why. 4 out of 5 seasons, and your most recent season, you're still you're going to be 27 years old this season, and you bit the dust pretty much only once. Like, you started more than 10, or you played in more than 10 games your entire career. The only time you didn't start more than 10 games was 2019, first season actually playing for New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like it doesn't seem to me like there's too much to really press about. I think that right now we're more primed to see a comeback season from Gardner Johnson than one where it's doomed to repeat what happened in Detroit.
One thing
it could be just good hopes, trying to get out there and put it into the universe. But based on his track record, like I know what recency bias would assume about him, but I'm not too worried about a guy, for the most part, who's started more than 10 games in just about every season except last year, all of a sudden, being fragile. I don't think he's fragile at all. I just think that, last season was some people have a hurt year. That's how it goes sometimes. So I think he'll bounce back and be fine. Everybody can, kind of lose their patience right now if they really want to about, him being banged up a little bit. But that's just football. You'll be amazed how easy it is to get banged up.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Another player that's hasn't missed more than 13 plus games in quite some time is Justin Simmons.
Yeah, and it's obviously, again, like it would be a good signing for sure. That does pretty much go right against last season with Gardner Johnson and saying who's healthy, who's not. Right now, I know there's injury related, pretty much depth defects in our defense, but man, how much do you think it would cost to bring in a Simmons?
So what I read is that his price is pretty damn high. But I think at this point, like training camp has started, teams are getting like situated. You're not at the tail end of your career. I think he's only played 7 seasons. He's 30 years old. But the safety market is just not there. Like if I'm Simmons, I'm jumping on like a 1 year. And this number might sound like astronomical, but like 1 year, like $10 million deal and loaded up with incentives, like $5 million base, and then the rest, incentive wise, you can be gained like playoffs, all pro bowl, things of that sort. Could be a lot, but again, like the Eagles need safeties as bad as they need linebackers, and that's 2 key positions. Like if you could, band-aid one and it's fully secure and fully heal with another group, I feel like this defense could be, like you said, it could be actually pretty sneaky good this season.
The other side to Justin Simmons is if you pay him $10 million, right, and then you have the incentive bonuses, things like that, that price, like you're paying for Like, is he going to start? Is he your outright
I think
starter?
that's the big question.
Okay, because if he's your outright starter, then I can understand paying somebody double-digit millions. If he's a depth guy, then that's really expensive for a guy that's probably not going to be featured on the field or featured as a part of an important cog of the defense on a weekly basis.
But another thing is, like, I don't think you bring in a guy like him if he's not going to be a starter. Like, I feel like if you get the notification that the Eagles are signing Justin Simmons, then it's guaranteed he's starting. It may not say much, it might not have any correlation to do with the injury of CJ, but it could say, like, hey, like, this guy's starting over Reed, and Reed's going to be the depth piece, which I feel like would be genius at this point.
That could
But
be
again,
safe.
like,
That could be a safe move as well. But
yes.
then, if you bring him in as a starter, now is he going to be on a 1-year deal? Is he going to want more of a term? I don't
It could
think
be like
you
a
bring
Devin
him in
White
for
deal.
a term. I think you bring him in as a prove it on a 10
Exactly.
mil.
How much did Devin White sign for?
Or if you bring him on a prove it, then you might say, hey, not 10 mil. But then again, if his price is so high, right? What other teams are in on him? That's another thing. Does he have a market personally?
So apparently he does have a market, and apparently he's supposed to be making a decision this week, from what I was reading. So
So he
Devin
has a
White actually got a
market based on
1-year
what he
deal
wants.
worth up to $7.5 million, and that's a prove it deal.
So
I
I
would
guess
think
10 million would make sense.
it might be ideal. I mean, because it's a safety.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I guess it would make sense. And if you're not betting on Gardner Johnson being ready by week 1, which will be another a bigger issue,
yes,
obviously, then I don't think you're really giving up too much with just even starting Blankenship and Simmons. But Simmons would be where Blankenship's seat is. So then you got to start figuring out, okay, how are you going to utilize Blankenship? Is he just going to sit back as depth, or is he going to be a guy that really understands Fangio's defense? Like, are you going to feature him inside as like a sort of a linebacker? The guy's a good tackler.
he's not a bad tackler at all, but it's just we got to, this is a secondary that allowed, I think, either the most or the second most touchdowns last season.
Yeah,
Like,
it was
something's got to give. Like, you got to have
leaky. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you got to have a security back there. You got to have a secure blanket going into the season. Again, I don't think any less of Blankenship if they make this move. I do think that Blankenship is still developing. He's still, going into that guy to be a starter. But you got to plug the leak, right? Like, you got to do something, man.
I mean, the question really just comes down to if we're really for certain saying, okay, hey, the Eagles are going for it this year. They're going for the Super Bowl this year. Do you feel that this Eagles defense is more ready for a Super Bowl appearance with Simmons as a free safety or with Blankenship? And I would say right now it's probably going to be Simmons. But, I don't think that Blankenship – I think that Blankenship has earned his place to start in the NFL.
And I think they could be creative with Blankenship. I mean, there could be, parts of this defense where you have 3 safeties on the field and you have Blankenship in the box.
Right.
And you can get creative in that front. Like, it allows you to have more creativity with your secondary, right? But at the end of the day, like, I don't know, like, it's just having that veteran presence. You had Rodney McLeod and Malcolm Jenkins at one point, 2 great veterans.
Right.
Like, you could have CJ and Simmons, 2 pretty damn good players that can actually help develop a Sidney Brown to be that guy. They can help, expand Reed Blankenship's game a little bit more. Because they didn't invest in safety in the draft at all. Like, it's starting to feel like the linebacker group again. Like, they're just not investing big moves on that, which I get because they did make some pretty damn good moves in this draft. But if the picks weren't there, then hey, Simmons is right there for the taking. Whatever the gap is, close it, make it happen, and let's move on to the season. Let's have a good year. Like, there's no way Howie's not all in on this season. There's no way Nick is not all in on the season because of him being on a hot seat. Like, it's not a.
I think that's
not
the thing.
rumor.
Philadelphia is always in on every season.
Yeah, and it's not.
I
a rumor,
really
right?
believe it.
Lurie met with Belichick, met with Kraft to talk about Belichick, right? That's not a myth. That's an actual fact. Like, right. Belichick was, he perked, the ears of the Eagles owner, and now, like, you got to show out. And the best way you show out is having the best 53-man roster you could possibly have and winning as much as you can. And Justin Simmons doesn't hurt this team as much as, as he's going to make this team better.
And I will say this, and just to kind of play realist here, if Simmons isn't coming to Philadelphia, and this is just kind of the defensive personnel, and it'd be you rotate from within. This is again, I have the feeling in my that the defense is going to be a work in progress, but it's going to progress. It's not going to regress as the season goes on, and then by next year, you got familiar coordinators, you got pretty much everything familiar with this team from this year, and you can kind of go about your personnel on the field that way. The window's still open. I think this team is a lot more rejuvenated because of the coaching hires, and whether you're pressing your luck this year, you have time.
Correct.
I don't think the time is I don't think time is abundant, but at the same time, I don't think you have to put all of your eggs in one basket this season.
I completely agree with that. And it's to kind of, I guess, counteract that or play devil's advocate, you have a pretty young team, right? Adding some veterans here and there to help push the notches up another level to possibly get to the Super Bowl and try to win this season. I mean, you could possibly do it, right? But at the same time, like, they're in an area of opportunity because the NFC is still developing. The Packers, we don't know if Jordan Love is going to show whether we're going to see the second half of the season Jordan Love versus the first half of the season Jordan Love, right? We don't know if the Lions are actually legit. Like, yes, they have the best offensive line, but can they actually put up the numbers they did last season again? The 49ers could possibly be losing their best wide receiver, Brandon Ayuk. That's a huge blow, right? Christian McCaffrey is not guaranteed to be healthy all season. That could be a huge blow. The Dallas Cowboys are fumbling terribly at the moment. There's a lot of things transpiring in the NFC where it's like you look at the Eagles and it's like I've been saying all season, like it's so weird to see a fundamentally a well-rounded team, like from top to bottom. It's so weird to see a GM making great moves, a coach saying the right things, a quarterback doing the right stuff. It's weird to see good things like this happen. You got to take advantage of these moments, and if adding a Justin Simmons gets you to that NFC Championship game, I'm sacrificing my hair follicles.
You don't have to. That's not saying too much. At least the ones on top of your head. That's not.
All right, we'll sacrifice it. We'll sacrifice Zach's.
That's fair. I wonder how many, the other fan bases within our division feel when it's like every single offseason the Eagles fans are, just like kind of you and I are sitting there saying, oh, Howie Roseman, here's another move. Oh, here's another, crack, summer that he had. I'm just like, yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily wrong. Like, you always want to rah-rah your team, but when you're rah-rahing your team almost this often and you're not really going out of your way to, like, find the reasons to, it's just kind of natural.
Yeah.
Congrats to Howie Roseman for pretty much for the most part always putting the Eagles in a place to succeed. So, yeah, I mean, if he goes again because of that, if he goes and says we're going to go get Simmons, I have the faith in it, and I have the faith in these coordinators more than anything else to kind of get creative and figure out how to use this personnel, especially. God, last year to this year is going to be such a night and day. And to think that the Eagles have made the playoffs last year, they kind of stumbled into it. I think they just burst through the doors this year.
Yeah, it feels like they're gonna be in a. It feels like 2022 all over again, where it's like you're hyped about it because it's like this.
Right.
We got AJ Brown, like this is a huge, like they're gonna have good, but they end up having a better season, right? Like it feels like that again. We got Saquon Barkley. This is gonna be huge. It's great to win, but hey, they knocked on the door of the Lombardi Trophy with just adding AJ Brown. They've added Saquon Barkley. They've added cornerbacks. They've added linebackers. The only question, and we could discuss this on the next episode, is I feel like safety. Well, the only questions: safety, linebacker, and possibly the defensive line. But we don't know what we're gonna see yet, right? there's excitement building, but it feels a little reserved. It's just I don't know. I'm hyped to see the season start.
I'm very excited, even for obviously, maybe not even for specifically, just any football at all, but the preseason on the 9th, beginning. I'm excited to see the position battles sort of unfold live.
Yeah,
I think, for the most part, everybody can agree to that. So it starts against the Ravens 7:30.
Yes,
so
absolutely. Definitely. I'm pretty sure Liam will do a preseason watch, a preseason live watch for the game. So shout out to LJ if he does do that. And then shout out to all you guys for joining us tonight. We appreciate you guys. We'll be back next week to talk more Eagles football, to give you guys more training camp updates. I think we might be doing Saturday episode this week, if I'm not mistaken.
It's a possibility. Were we talking about Saturday, or were we maybe going to try the Sunday start?
I think
Saturday.
Saturday,
Of course, guys.
Yeah, we'll brainstorm off the pod.
just be on the lookout. Social medias, I'll put it out there on at Flippin the Birds. Flippin Birds Pod. Shit, what's our socials?
I think it's Flippin Bird Pod because somebody asked
Flippin Bird Pod. I was like, wait, Flippin the Birds everywhere else. Flippin Birds Pod. Okay. Yeah. Flippin Birds Pod. See, I'm going to have to say it like that. And I guarantee the one time I ever introduce this show, I'll say Flippin Birds Pod and not Flippin the Birds, and I'll lose my mind off camera.
So anyway, it's Flippin Birds Pod. There we go. Flippin Birds.
Flippin Birds Pod. We had to change all of our merch now.
Flippin Birds over here. But shout out to you guys for joining us. We appreciate you guys. And yeah, we'll see you guys soon.
Go Birds!
Yes, sir.